May 12, 1944, 2:23 p.m., Monte Cassino, Italy. All hell broke loose. Staff Sergeant Kurt Meyer, 27 years old, a German paratrooper with the 1st Paratrooper Division, was thrown through the air by the force of the blast. His back slammed against concrete, his lungs burned, dust and smoke filled everything. As the ringing in his ears subsided, as his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he realized 3 things. 1. He was alone. Utterly alone. His unit had fallen back during the Allied assault. He was cut off. 2. He was trapped in a partially destroyed bunker. 3 walls still stood. The roof was half collapsed. The main entrance was buried. 3. He heard voices outside. English voices. American voices. Many voices. He was surrounded. Meyer crawled towards the only window, a narrow slit in the concrete wall. He peered out cautiously. What he saw froze his blood. Allied soldiers. Everywhere, he counted quickly, 15, 20, 30. He stopped counting at 50, maybe more. They were systematically searching the area, bunker by bunker, room by room, looking for surviving German soldiers. It was only a matter of time before they found him. Meyer sank back against the wall, taking stock, his weapon, Kar 98K rifle, ammunition, 27 rounds, 2 hand grenades, his water, half a canteen, maybe 300 milliliters, his food, nothing. His last rations had been used up last night. His options, surrender or fight, but fight against 50 men, alone. That wasn't a fight, that was suicide. Outside, voices approached. Check that bunker, looks intact. Roger that, moving in. Footsteps, getting closer. Meyer raised his rifle, aimed at the blocked entrance. His finger rested on the trigger. The footsteps came nearer, nearer. Then, silence. No way through here. Main entrance is completely collapsed. If anyone's in there, they're trapped. Mark it and move on. We'll come back with equipment later. The footsteps faded away. Meyer exhaled. His whole body trembled. They knew someone might be in here, but they didn't have time to dig now. They would be back later. That gave him time. But time for what? He couldn't escape. The main entrance was blocked. The window was too small and too exposed. He couldn't fight. 27 rounds against 50 men was no chance. He couldn't wait for rescue. His unit had been pulled back. No one was coming. The only logical option was surrender. But Kurt Meyer hadn't become a paratrooper by doing what was logical. He'd become a paratrooper by jumping out of planes into enemy fire, because he fought when others fled, because giving up was never an option. He checked his rifle, counted his rounds again. 27. Good, he whispered into the darkness. Then we'll see how far 27 rounds go. Day 1, May 12th, 1944. Afternoon. Meyer spent the first hours understanding his bunker, learning how to survive in a tomb. The bunker was about 4 meters by 3 meters. 2 small rooms connected by a narrow passage. The front room had the window. The back room was completely dark, but more sheltered. The half-collapsed roof had one advantage. It let light in through the cracks. Not much, but enough that Meyer wasn't in total darkness during the day. And there was another discovery, an important one. In the back corner of the second room, Meyer found a narrow shaft, maybe a ventilation shaft or an old drain. It was barely 40 centimeters in diameter. Meyer stuck his arm in, felt cold, damp air. The shaft led somewhere. Up? To the side? He couldn't tell, but it was a way out. Maybe. He would keep it as a last option. Around 5 p.m. He heard the Allies again. They were getting closer, continuing their systematic search. Meyer took position at the window, watched. A group of 5 American soldiers searched a bunker 30 meters away, then 20 meters, then 10 meters. They were approaching his hiding place. Meyer's finger tightened on the trigger again. If they tried to dig out the entrance, he would have to shoot. And then it would all be over. The soldiers came to his bunker. Saw the collapsed entrance. Same as before. Collapse. Mark it. One of the soldiers pulled a can of paint from his bag, sprayed a red X on the outside wall. That's for the cleanup crews. Let's move. They moved on. Meyer stared at the red X that now marked his bunker. A symbol. A countdown. Eventually, the cleanup crews would come, with equipment, with time, and then there would be no hiding. But how long did he have? A day? 2? A week? He had to buy time, had to confuse the Allies, had to make them believe there was still active resistance in this area. A dangerous idea formed in his head. Day 1, May 12th, 1944, 11:47 p.m. Night. Complete darkness. No moonlight through the heavy clouds. Meyer waited until he heard no more voices, until the enemy patrols thinned out. Then he moved, slowly, carefully. He pushed stones and rubble away from the blocked entrance. Not enough to create an exit, just enough to dig a narrow tunnel. It took almost an hour. His hands bled, his muscles ached. But finally, he had an opening, just big enough for him to squeeze through. Meyer crawled out into the night. The world outside was a landscape of destruction, craters, burning vehicles, destroyed bunkers. The smell of smoke and death hung heavy in the air. But it was empty. For the moment, Meyer moved quickly, like a shadow, 50 meters west to a destroyed ammunition depot he'd seen from the window during the day. What he found was better than he'd hoped. 3 crates of rifle ammunition, a crate of hand grenades, 2 canteens of water. He couldn't carry everything. He decided quickly, 100 rounds, 4 hand grenades, both canteens. Then, the most important thing. He took one of the hand grenades, pulled the pin, and threw it into the ammunition depot. He ran back to his bunker, crawled through the narrow tunnel, sealed the entrance again from the inside. 5 seconds later, boom! The explosion lit up the night. Ammunition detonated in a chain reaction. Meyer immediately heard shouts, orders, running. Contact, west sector, multiple explosions. German attack, form defensive positions. Get the wounded evacuated. Chaos. Meyer smiled in the darkness of his bunker. They thought now that German troops were in the area, active, an attack. They would be more careful. They would have to pull more men for security. And above all, they wouldn't have time to search for trapped soldiers in collapsed bunkers. One night had bought him maybe 2 or 3 extra days. He took a small sip of water, allowed himself to relax for the first time in hours. Day 1 was over. Day 2, May 13th, 1944, 07:12 a.m. Meyer was awakened by voices, loud, angry voices. He crawled to the window, peered out. An American officer and about 20 soldiers stood near the destroyed ammunition depot. They were searching the area. Someone was here, the officer said. Look at these footprints. One person, moving from that direction. He pointed directly at Meyer's bunker. Meyer's heart froze. He had made a mistake, a deadly mistake. His footprints in the rubble. The officer and his men followed the tracks. Straight to the buried entrance. Here, the officer said. The tracks lead here, and look at this. He pointed to the entrance. Some of these stones have been moved recently. Silence. There's someone in there, one of the soldiers whispered. The officer nodded slowly, drew his pistol. Surround the bunker. No one leaves this place. Get explosives. We're blowing the front wall. The soldiers spread out. Meyer watched them take positions around his bunker. 20 rifles pointed at his only escape route. He was trapped. Meyer leaned against the wall, breathed slowly. Thought. He had maybe 20 minutes until the explosives arrived. Then they would blow the wall, would rush in, and he would die or be captured. He looked at his 27 rounds of ammunition, at his 4 hand grenades. Could he do it? 20 against 1? No. Impossible. But maybe he didn't have to kill them all. Just scare them. A plan formed. A crazy, desperate plan. Meyer took 2 of his hand grenades, positioned them on the front wall, right behind the buried entrance, tied wire to the pins. Then he crawled back into the rear room, to the ventilation shaft. 15 minutes later he heard, "Explosives are ready, everyone take cover." Detonation in 3, 2, 1. Boom! The front wall exploded outward. Debris and smoke filled the air. "Go in now!" American soldiers stormed through the opening into the bunker. Exactly at that moment, Meyer pulled the wire. The 2 hand grenades detonated, not strong enough to kill the soldiers. They were still in the entrance, but strong enough to throw them back, to create panic. "Grenades! Back! Back!" Screams, confusion. And in that moment of confusion, Meyer climbed into the ventilation shaft. It was tight, so tight he could barely breathe. His shoulders scraped the sides, but he squeezed onward. The shaft led upward, steeply. Meyer pushed himself forward, inch by inch. Above, he heard the Americans, "Cleared! The bunker is empty." How empty? Where is he? "I don't know. Maybe died in the explosion." "Search the rubble." Meyer reached the end of the shaft, a narrow opening covered with metal grating. He kicked at the grating, once, twice. On the 3rd kick it gave way. Meyer climbed out. He was about 40 yards from his original bunker. The shaft had led him underground to another part of the destroyed building complex. He was free, for the moment. But he was also exposed, in the middle of the day, surrounded by enemies. Meyer looked around quickly. 20 yards away stood a half-destroyed observation post, small, dark, unnoticed. He ran as fast as he could, threw himself through the opening, landed hard on concrete. Outside, he could still hear the Americans at his old bunker. He had escaped. But now he was in a new hiding place, smaller, less secure. And with only 27 rounds and 2 hand grenades, Day 2 wasn't over yet. Day 3, May 14th, 1944, 04:33 a.m. No more water. Meyer had emptied his last canteen last night. Now he could feel his mouth drying out. His tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth. He knew. Without water, he had maybe 3 days. 4 if he was lucky. It was day 3. The clock was ticking, and that wasn't his only problem. The Americans had changed their patrol patterns. After the explosion and his escape, they had become more careful, more guards, more patrols, less sleep. They knew now. A German soldier was still here, somewhere. A ghost. They were calling him the Shadow of Monte Cassino. Meyer heard them talking about it as they patrolled past his new hiding place. "It doesn't make sense," one said. "One man alone. How is he surviving? Where is he hiding? Maybe it's more than one, maybe a whole group." No, the footprints. Always just one man, always the same shoe size. Then he's damn good or damn lucky. Neither will last forever. The captain has requested 30 additional men. We're going to search every hole, every bunker, every room. 30 additional men. That made 80 soldiers looking for him. And he had no more water. Meyer had to make a decision. Stay and dehydrate, or risk going to find water. It wasn't a real decision. That night at 02:00 a.m., Meyer left his hiding place again. This time, he moved even slower, even more carefully. The Allies had set up floodlights, doubled watch posts. But they had also set up something else, a field camp with tents, with supplies, with water. Meyer lay motionless in the rubble for 20 minutes, only 15 yards from the camp, watching, learning the patrol patterns. Guard changes every 30 minutes. Gap between patrols, about 90 seconds. 90 seconds to go 15 yards. Find water. Return. It was doable, just barely. Meyer waited for the gap. Then he moved, quickly but silently, like a shadow across the battlefield, reached the camp, saw a supply container with canteens, reached for two. At that moment, a noise behind him. Meyer froze, turned slowly. An American soldier stood 3 yards away, fresh back from the latrine. Staring at Meyer with wide eyes, time froze. The soldier reached for his rifle. Meyer was faster. He hurled one of the canteens, hitting the soldier square in the head. The man stumbled. Meyer sprang forward, swinging the butt of his Kar 98K rifle. Once, twice. The soldier dropped to the ground, unconscious. Meyer had maybe 10 seconds before the noise alerted the others. He grabbed 3 canteens, a can of rations, a first aid kit, and ran. Behind him, shouts erupted. Alarm! He's here! In the camp! Gunfire crackled. Bullets whizzed past Meyer's ears. He dove behind a crater. More gunfire. He couldn't go back to his hideout. They'd follow him. They'd find it. He had to throw them off the scent. Meyer ran east, away from his hiding spot, leading the chase in the wrong direction. Then, after about 100 yards, he tossed one of his last grenades, not at the soldiers, but at an old ammunition pile he'd spotted during the day. The explosion was massive. Fire, smoke, confusion. Under the cover of the blast, Meyer made a sharp hook, north, crawling through trenches back toward his hideout. It took almost an hour. Every second he expected to be discovered, but he made it. Back in his little observation post, he breathed heavily. His heart hammered, his hands shook, but he had water, he had food, he had won. For today. Outside, he heard the American captain yell, "I want that man, dead or alive, double the guards. No one sleeps until we have him." Day 3 ended. The hunt intensified. Day 4. May 15th, 1944, 06:44 hours. The dogs are coming. Meyer woke up to a sound that froze the blood in his veins. Barking. Dogs. He crawled to the observation slit. What he saw confirmed his worst fears. 3 German shepherds, trained tracker dogs, were pulling their handlers directly toward his area. And with them, 30 soldiers. "The dogs will find him," he heard an officer say. "It's only a matter of time. No one can completely hide their scent." Meyer leaned back against the wall, breathing heavily. Dogs. This was something he couldn't outsmart. Or could he? He frantically searched his memory. Paratrooper training. Survival training. What had the instructor said about tracker dogs? Then he remembered. Dogs follow scent molecules. If you can mask the scent with something even stronger, they'll lose the trail. But with what? He had no chemicals, no perfume, nothing. Or did he? Meyer looked around his small hiding place. In the corner was an old gasoline can, empty, but the inside was still damp with oily residue. Oil, petroleum. The smell was strong enough to make a person's eyes water. Would it confuse the dogs? He had no other choice. Meyer tilted the can and let the last drops of oily residue drip onto his hands. He rubbed it over his boots, his uniform, even his face. The smell was overwhelming, suffocating, but maybe it would be enough. 10 minutes later, he heard the dogs getting closer, barking, excited. They had a scent. Meyer pressed himself into the farthest corner of his hiding place, held his breath. The dogs were coming right for him. 50 yards, 30 yards, 15 yards. Then, Confusion. The dogs barked erratically, running in circles, sniffing in all directions. "What's wrong with them?" asked one of the handlers. "I don't know. They're losing the scent. Maybe. Do you smell that? Petroleum. Or oil. It's everywhere here. Damn it, that's masking everything. The dogs are useless in this stench." The dogs were led away. Confusion amongst the soldiers. Meyer heard the captain cursing. "All right. If dogs don't work, we'll do it the hard way. Sector by sector search. Every single building." The dogs were defeated. But 30 soldiers would now be methodically searching every hiding place. Day 4 wasn't over, and it was about to get worse. Day 5, May 16th, 1944, 11:15 hours, the hunger bites. Meyer's stomach ached. Not the slight discomfort of a few skipped meals, real, burning pain. He hadn't eaten anything substantial in 2 days. The half can of rations he had was enough for maybe 3 spoonfuls per day. 3 spoonfuls, that was maybe 200 calories. A human needed 2,000 calories per day to function normally. A soldier in a stress situation needed 3,000. Meyer was getting 10% of that. His body was starting to consume itself. He could feel his muscles weakening. His hands were shaking. His vision sometimes blurred. But even worse than the physical hunger was the mental battle. Every second his brain thought about food, about bread, about meat, about anything. At night he dreamed of his mother's Sunday dinners, roast pork with dumplings, the smell of freshly baked bread. He woke up with tears in his eyes. And then he heard something even worse. The Americans outside were eating lunch. He smelled it. Fried meat, coffee, bread. He heard their laughter, their conversations. "Man, this spam isn't so bad when you're hungry enough." "Spam? You call that food? Wait until we get home, then I'll show you real food." They laughed, ate, lived, while Meyer sat in his hole, starving, fighting for survival. In that moment, he didn't hate them. He just envied them. But the envy turned into determination. They wouldn't break him, not through hunger, not through anything. He ate his 3 spoonfuls of rations for the day, slowly, chewing every bite as if it were a feast. And he kept fighting. Day 5, afternoon, the new tactic. At 15 hours, Meyer heard the American captain give new orders. "Listen up. This German soldier is somehow surviving. That means he has access to water, to food, maybe to hidden supplies. From now on, we destroy every supply depot in this sector, every possible food source, every water source. We seal everything off. He'll either starve to death or he'll have to risk raiding our camp. And when he does, we'll have him." Meyer listened, realizing the implications. They were now playing a game of starvation, waiting for him to get desperate enough to make a mistake. And the worst part, it might work. Meyer checked his supplies again. Water, enough for 2 days. Food, enough for maybe 3 days if he rationed himself extremely. 5 days maximum, then he would die of thirst or starvation. The clock was ticking. Day 6, 17th. May 1944, 3:22 a.m. The bounty. Mike Meyer hadn't slept. Couldn't sleep. Hunger and thirst were gnawing at him. But then, he overheard something interesting. The captain was gathering his troops for a night briefing. "Gentlemen, I've had enough," he started. "We've been hunting a single German soldier for 6 days now. A single man, and we 80 trained soldiers can't find him. This is unacceptable, embarrassing. High Command is already asking why it's taking us so long. Therefore, I've decided a bounty. $100 for the man who finds the shadow, dead or alive. $100, that's 2 months' salary for a private. I want this man, and I want him now. $100. Mike heard the excitement among the soldiers. $100 was serious money back in 1944, and suddenly, it wasn't 80 soldiers dutifully searching for him anymore. It was 80 bounty hunters, each motivated by the prospect of wealth. The search became even more intense, even more aggressive, even more desperate. Day 6, morning 9:33 a.m. Near the end, Mike's water was almost gone. Just a few sips left. That was it. His food was gone. He finished the last can last night. He felt his body weakening, his mind becoming foggy. Dehydration was setting in. If he didn't find water in the next 24 hours, he would die. Not by enemy fire, by thirst. It was ironic. He'd survived 80 soldiers, survived dogs, survived explosions and close combat, and now he would die from something as mundane as a lack of water. That night, as he lay in his hiding place, barely conscious, he heard a conversation right outside. 2 American soldiers, just 6 feet from his hiding spot. "I think he's dead," one said. "No one can survive this long without proper food, without sleep. We're hunting a ghost." "Maybe you're right, but the captain won't give up until we find a body." "Our body? In this mess? We'll never find a body. He could be under any one of 100 collapsed bunkers." They moved on. Mike lay in the darkness, realizing something. They would never find him. Not alive anyway. They were already looking for a corpse. If he could just hold out for another day or two, maybe they would give up, assume he was dead. He just had to survive, just a little longer. Day 7, May 18th, 1944, 4:47 p.m. Mike no longer knew exactly what day it was, how much time had passed. Everything blurred into a single endless moment of thirst, hunger, and fear. But he was still alive. That afternoon, he heard the news he had been waiting for. The captain and his men were gathered at their encampment. "Gentlemen, we have new orders. We're moving north tomorrow. Operation Diadem Phase 3. We break camp at dawn." One of the soldiers asked, "What about the German soldier, sir? The shadow?" The captain paused for a moment. "He's dead. Has to be. No one survives 7 days in this wasteland without supplies. Mark the area as hostile. Leave a message for the next unit coming through. They can finish the cleanup." They were giving up. Mike could hardly believe it. He had won. Through pure survival. He had outlasted 80 soldiers, but he wasn't safe yet. Had to wait until they really left. Day 8, May 19th, 1944, 8:22 a.m. Mike watched through a narrow crack as the American troops broke down their camp. Trucks were being loaded. Soldiers were forming up. At 9 a.m., the convoy moved out, heading north. Slowly, it became quiet. Mike waited. 2 hours, 3, 4, until he was sure they were really gone. Then finally, he crawled out of his hiding place. The world outside was silent, empty, like an abandoned battlefield. Mike stood on unsteady legs. 7 days without proper food, without sleep, without safety had taken their toll. He estimated he weighed 20 pounds less. His uniform hung loosely on his body. His face was gaunt, but he was alive. He started walking, eastward, towards the German lines. It took 2 days. 2 days of wandering through no man's land, of hiding from patrols, of drinking from contaminated puddles. But on May 21st, 1944, at 2:33 p.m., he reached a German outpost. The guards saw him coming, raised their rifles. Then they recognized the uniform, the paratrooper insignia. "My God," one whispered, "he's a ghost." Mike fell to his knees. His voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. "Staff Sergeant Kurt Meyer, 1st Paratrooper Division, requesting permission to return to my unit." The guards immediately took him to the field hospital. What followed? The report that became a legend in the hospital. 3 days later, after water, food, and sleep, Meyer reported what had happened to his commanding officer. Captain Schneider listened with growing amazement. "Let me summarize, Staff Sergeant. You were alone behind enemy lines for 7 days, surrounded by at least 80 enemies, no reinforcements, minimal supplies, and you survived by hiding and the occasional night ops. Yes, sir. And in the process, you destroyed 2 enemy ammunition dumps, knocked out a soldier, and escaped capture multiple times? Yes, sir. Schneider leaned back in his chair, looking at Mike with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. Staff Sergeant Meyer, do you know what the survival time is for a lone soldier behind enemy lines? On average? No, sir. 8 hours. 8 hours before he's either killed or captured. You survived 7 days. 168 hours. You exceeded the average by a factor of 21. He stood up, saluted Meyer. What you did isn't just extraordinary, it's one of the most remarkable feats of survival in this war. I will recommend you for the Iron Cross. Mike Meyer received the Iron Cross First Class 3 weeks later, but more importantly, his story spread. In German units, it was told as an example of paratrooper tenacity. In Allied units, it was told as a warning. Never underestimate a single, determined soldier. The American soldiers who searched for Meyer never truly understood what had happened. To them, he remained the shadow of Monte Cassino, a myth, a war story. But Kurt Meyer was real, and what he did was real. Epilogue: after the war. Kurt Meyer survived World War II. He was wounded in the final days of the war, but he recovered. After the war, he returned to Germany. He worked as a forester in the Bavarian Alps. He rarely spoke about his time at Monte Cassino, only once, to his grandson, in 1982. "Grandpa," the boy asked, "how did you survive that? 7 days against 50 men?" Meyer thought for a long time. Then he said, "I didn't survive against 50 men. I survived against myself, against my fear, against my despair, against the voice in my head that told me to give up. The 50 enemies outside were the easy part. I could evade them. I could outsmart them. But the enemy in my head, who said I wouldn't make it, who said surrender would be easier, that was the most dangerous. I survived because I defeated that enemy. Every day, every hour, every moment I almost gave up. That is the secret to survival, not fighting the enemies outside, but the ones inside." Kurt Meyer died in 1987 at the age of 70, peacefully, in his sleep. His gravestone reads, "Staff Sergeant Kurt Meyer, 1st Paratrooper Division, who never gave up. The lesson of Monte Cassino." What can we learn from Kurt Meyer's story? First, survival is often not a question of strength. It's a question of will. Meyer wasn't the strongest soldier, not the best trained, not the best equipped. But he had something many didn't: the absolute refusal to give up. Even when every logical voice told him to surrender, a deeper voice said, "Not today." Second, a single person can achieve more than numbers suggest. 50 to 1 are impossible odds. On paper. But paper doesn't account for creativity, doesn't account for courage, doesn't account for the strength of a person who has nothing to lose. Meyer didn't defeat 50 men by fighting. He defeated them by outlasting, by adapting, by thinking like a ghost. Third, the most dangerous battles take place in the mind. Meyer was hungry, thirsty, afraid, exhausted. But the hardest part wasn't the physical pain. It was the mental burden, the temptation to give up. The voice that whispered, "It's okay, you've done enough, and surrender." Every day, he defeated that voice. Again, that is heroism. Not one-time great deeds, but the daily, hourly, minutely decision to keep going. Today, 80 years later, Monte Cassino is now quiet, a place of remembrance. Thousands of tourists visit it every year. Few know about the small observation post, where one man survived for 7 days. But the lesson remains. When you think you can't go on, when the odds seem impossible, when every voice tells you to give up, think of Kurt Meyer, alone, surrounded, without hope, who decided, not today, not here, not me, and survived. Because sometimes survival is the greatest form of victory, and sometimes the refusal to give up is the bravest thing a person can do.